for joining us today. My name's Courtney, and I'm with the content team here at Login VSI. I have our Senior Director of Customer Engineering, Brian Martinovich, with me today, and he's going to be sharing about all things Microsoft AVD and Azure. So Brian, thanks so much for hopping on with me. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, and good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon where you're listening to this.
Awesome. So let's hop right into it, Brian. We know Microsoft AVD is super popular. We're hearing a ton about it from our customers. Can you help me understand why so many organizations are considering migrating?
Yeah, absolutely. So enterprises have become accustomed to the benefits associated with virtualized desktops and apps over the years. It's really always been about building walls around your data. And in fact, Microsoft recognized this trend and they adjusted their business model towards a consumption-based approach several years ago. And thus, inevitably, Office 365 became accessible only through a subscription, and the desktop was the natural evolution of that.
Sure. So that's good to know. So can you help me think, like, if I'm an organization or I'm on an IT team and I'm thinking about making that jump, what are some of the top things that I need to keep in mind?
Absolutely. So I think the key thing is that you need to focus specifically on Opex versus capex, and that's going to be a shift in mindset for a lot of people. The cloud itself represents Opex, right? And keeping Opex predictable should be the #1 concern of IT organizations. In fact, a great mentor of mine taught me that in business, many things are outside of our control, but the one thing that you can directly control is how much you're spending. Traditionally, there's been a problem with a need for more data. Suppose that you follow the instructions provided to you by the vendors, from hardware to software, you listen to the marketing materials, and you base your assessment on data created by real users' on-prem utilization ratios. You take a plunge, you're hoping your end user experience doesn't blow up, and you only spend some of your money in the first couple months, and you plan on adjusting the plane as you fly. IT teams do this every day, and while it works in some cases, it's not really optimal and runs with a lot of risks, right? I'm here to tell you that there's a better way of doing things, and that way starts with empirical data, a repeatable testing methodology to make your decisions. Otherwise, you're basically building on shifting sands.
So where are we thinking about in terms of how Login Enterprise comes in? How can we enhance or extend, AVD?
Absolutely. So by leveraging Login VSI's virtual user technology, and this is embedded directly into Login Enterprise, you can create workflows that mirror the behavior of your real users. The big difference is that we're removing subjectivity and creating 100% repeatable methodology. You can run this against your current on-prem deployment, and this will help you to understand what this looks like on Azure Virtual Desktop environments and ultimately how that impacts your costs. So by focusing on activities that drive your business revenue specifically, like say, for example, your call center, or you have clinicians or traders or developers, you can now understand exactly what's required to deliver a good user experience and reduce your excess spending. This applies to Azure Virtual Desktop and Azure more generally speaking. So at that point, you can continue to execute this workflow in your production environments. This way, whenever there's a new configuration, technology, instance, etc., that comes out, you can quickly evaluate and ensure that you deliver the same experience while managing costs and controlling it.
We know that, a lot of IT teams, a big issue for them is looking for the root cause of EUC issues. So kind of what makes Login Enterprise different from other solutions in the market, especially in relation to how we support AVD?
Absolutely. So Login VSI and Login Enterprise more broadly leverages the concept of a virtual user, whereas traditional monitoring solutions have leveraged real users to reproduce issues. The problem with this is that too late, right? Once a real user is impacted, you're dealing with an outage or a slowed down production environment to some degree, and you're also interrupting that user's workflow. Login Enterprise is inherently proactive in that the virtual user is driving the business behaviors constantly at a scale, and by doing so, you can introduce reproduction scenarios to catch issues before the users are actually impacted. Many organizations will utilize a subsection of their users in a user acceptance testing environment before promoting it to production. And while this scenario is better, you are still diverting employees' precious time, which should be going towards their daily job functions,
Right.
Instead of experimenting, right?
Gotcha.
The other aspect is that the human guinea pig will never be able to do the amount of work that a virtual user can.
Mhm.
The virtual user can operate 24/7 in your Azure Virtual Desktop deployment, and any effort invested in building workflows is returned to you every time you execute this workflow. Lastly, the virtual user can drive interactions into any applications your real users consume, an advantage that other legacy monitoring solutions simply do not have.
I would like to go back to a point you made earlier in regards to cost. We know that migration in and of itself can be complex and challenging. How can a team, or do you have any suggestions for a team to stay within their budget parameters and make sure that they're on point there?
Absolutely. And that's a great question, right? The old adage comes true, right? You cannot track what you cannot measure, and consequently, it's cost, right? Login Enterprise empowers IT teams to replicate actual revenue generating activities, or any action for that matter, to find the balance between cost and optimal user experience. You can summon as many virtual users as required to find the most optimal configuration and look at the comparison to see how it intersects with the associated cost. If you're constantly evaluating the best configuration cost-wise, it's critical for cloud deployments like Azure Virtual Desktop specifically, as the technology continually changes and the configuration possibilities are almost unlimited.
We all kind of understand that time is money and speed is important. So say for an example that a company, they're thinking about, making that jump to AVD, or they've recently made that jump to AVD, and they'd like to bring Login Enterprise on to support them in that. Is it pretty straightforward? What does that process look like?
Yeah, it's important to note that Login Enterprise has been designed from the ground up to be highly secure and portable. First, you import into your environment of your choice. This typically takes around 10 to 20 minutes. Once that's done, you have standard networking configuration, and you're up and running realistically in about an hour.
Wow.
This will allow you to get baseline information almost immediately.
That's pretty amazing. That's pretty amazing. And it's super exciting. I think that that's good news, right? For any company kind of making that jump, that they have like Login Enterprise to support them in the background. Is there any key takeaways that you have, or anything that you're really excited about that's coming up on the Login Enterprise front?
Of course. So I think that one of the missing components for success inside of large enterprise virtual desktop and application deployments is really a direct link between the cost of running it. Soon we'll unveil a way to visualize this cost data in a way that's customized to your environment. So we're excited to deliver something completely groundbreaking and plan to change how people look at where they're running their workloads specifically.
Yeah, that sounds pretty special. And the word groundbreaking makes me super excited. So I will make sure to check back in with you and get some updates when you finally are able to unveil what that is.